Hey, good morning, everyone. Well, I guess it is morning, right? It is morning here with us. I'm your host of Al Richards with the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Again, we apologize for the background. We are still looking for a new studio. Please bear with us. So I'm actually still here in my gym trunks and my t-shirt from going to the gym this morning. I got my hat on backwards. I guess I could turn it maybe sideways like this a little bit to look a little more official. But anyway, guys, we got a really good show today for you. We have what our title is today is Adversity to Success. It's a story about transformation. I met this guest who's on today. His name is Ty Shane. Ty, thank you for being here with us today, man. Greatly appreciate it. You and I spoke, I don't know, about a month ago. We got to know one another a lot more. I am so grateful that you reached out to me and we had this opportunity to build this friendship and get to know one another. And my gosh, you've gone through a lot of crap in your life, haven't you?
Yeah, but I mean, it's all for the better.
Yeah, right. We go through pains and struggles, and at the time we think our life's actually fallen apart, and at times it is, right? I mean, at times it really is. However, it ends up being our biggest strengths.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I think moving forward, when like personally, whenever I hit obstacles and barriers, it's being able to pull back on those moments where my life was falling apart, and that's like the source of my strength. And so that I think that applies for all of us.
Yeah, yeah, uh, I've told my story here now that I'm actually opened up and started telling my story. I talk about hitting my knees for the first time after, since I was probably about 13 years old. And I remember how embarrassed I was to hit my knees and talk to God, right? You're talking to somebody that some of us do believe in, but it's someone that we don't see. However, I believe he's there because I see a lot of miracles and a lot of amazing things happen. And I'm also now a huge, huge, huge believer, not saying I wasn't before, but losing my job of 24 years and this path that I have been put upon and the people that I have gotten to meet, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now.
No, most definitely. I can speak for myself as well. Gratitude for my adversities and gratitude for the demons that I had to overcome. And I mean, like I was saying before, I don't know how I would have the courage to take the leaps I'm taking today had I not been faced with, those trials and tribulations and built courage and confidence in myself through those experiences.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us, we fall back on our past, right? I realized with doing a lot of soul searching here ever since I started opening up, sharing my story of a lot of things that I was actually hiding, not realizing I was doing it till I really put my mind to it. I saw my wife do the exact same thing. And for our listeners, I want you guys to know, and a lot of our guests have said this as well. I have a declaration that I read in the mornings, and there's three things in my declaration that I put in there, and it says, I am not my past, I am not my failures, and I am not my mistakes. So what I did wrong, whether it was a week ago, 2 days ago, or a year or 2 or 3 years ago, that's not who I am today, right? And you are a totally different person now compared to what you were, 6 months ago.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think too, especially when we take that beyond the 6 months and we start going back years and then we compare ourselves to like
Yeah.
when we first started, like when we battled addiction for the first time to like all the failures throughout it. And I mean, the gratitude part and kind of what you said is we are not those, but we are because of those.
Yeah.
And so without those, we wouldn't be every single one of them. Not so easy in the moment, but in the big picture, it's actually kind of beautiful.
Yeah, it actually is. So tell us a little bit more of your history. When when did your battle start?
So, I mean, I think my battle is kind of like a lot of people's. It doesn't necessarily dictate you're going to jump into addiction, but it started with smoking weed, drinking alcohol as a young teen at about 14, 15 years old. It was more of the rebellious mindset. And then for me, for my story, I ended up going to a group home for those behaviors, and that really that kind of ignited my future choices, because then I learned, I'm like, what, ecstasy, what, cocaine, like I didn't even know that this stuff existed. And so then after the group home, I'm still rebellious. Now I'm mad at my parents, like, and so I started seeking out things. And so it was a slippery slope from there. So about, it was 19 when I did meth for the first time, and that's when everything went downhill. Straight from there, downhill.
Wow. So you pretty much hit the big time pretty quick then.
Yeah, yeah, no, most definitely. And it's directly associated to the people you're around. So like when I hear people say like weed is the gateway drug, the way that I lived it and I experienced it is it's not the drug itself, but what it is, it's the people who are around the drug, because what ended up happening was people who smoked weed also did these other drugs, and they eventually came into my friend circle. And then like they were hiding out doing it. I'm curious. I want to know, like, what are you guys
Right.
doing there? Like, why are you guys breaking away? What are you doing this? Like, I don't know. You don't want to know. I'm like, no, no, I do really want to know. And so, that's how it came about. You know, just my normal smoking, drinking, party friends. And next thing I know, I was doing meth, and let's just say my bank account emptied really quick,
Yeah, I can
and my
imagine.
yeah bill stopped getting paid. So that's where it started.
I got a question. Do you a lot it's been said for a long time, right? That smoking weed is pretty much the starting point, right? Because if you smoke weed, then it is going to lead you into other drugs. I, for myself, did not believe that at all because I didn't even start smoking weed till I was probably 2 weeks before I graduated from high school, right? And then out of high school, I started working construction, and hell, everyone, and I pretty much mean everyone that worked construction back in the early 80s, we all smoked it, right? We smoked it when we got up in the morning, we smoked it on the way into work, we smoked it at lunch, we smoked it on the way into the warehouse, we smoked it on the way home, and we smoked more when we got home, right? And we functioned, we worked, we never missed our work, we always did our work great. However, I remember the first time that I was offered cocaine, and I refused it for a long time. And the reason why I refused it is because it was shortly after John Belushi, and I don't know if you know who John Belushi is. John Belushi was a comedian and an actor, very, very popular. He pretty much got his launch when he played. He was on Saturday Night Live, and then also he played in Animal House. And he's kind
Okay,
of
I
a
know
crazy, chubby dude that, I mean, that was a character. And he was a big cocaine user, right? And he died. He did so much cocaine it killed him. And I remember the first time that I tried it, and I had smoked hash, after I had smoked pot. I had done some mushrooms, which I enjoyed the heck out of those. And I'd wake up with my ribs so sore the next morning because I was laughing all the time. I remember laughing for about an hour at our cat's tail just because the way it was moving around. But I never thought doing that line of cocaine would come back and nip me in the butt years down the road. And I mean, was it that way for you? I mean, apparently you did the meth for the very first time and you were probably just like, "Oh my gosh, this is heaven."
Yeah, I can still remember. I still remember that experience. I remember where I was. You could take me back to that Home Depot parking lot, and I could probably get you within about 5 spark parking spaces. It was an experience like no other. I mean, I don't want to get into like all the nitty details, but like I felt it, and I at that moment, and I think this applies to just about every drug user, everyone who battles addiction. You don't realize the slippery slope that takes you on. And you don't realize at the moment the power that these substances will wield over you, and you don't even consider that, this is going to impact your life in a negative way come 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I didn't realize that moment that I was going to end up being incarcerated for cumulatively for, a little bit of change over 7 years because of that choice that I made. And I mean, the prefrontal cortex in a male doesn't develop until the average age of 25. And so my ability to make logic well-sounded decisions was not it was not there yet. And I couldn't play that tape through. And when you're with friends, when you're, easily influenced, when, you have those, low self-esteem issues, because I mean, as a late teen, the relationships, at least my friend group, like we didn't have the best relationships. We were still learning who we are, what we stood for, what our values were. We didn't know what we wanted to do with our lives. And
Yeah.
so you're still in that phase of life, and you just think, oh, okay, cool. I'm just gonna have a good time with some friends. Oh, they're doing this. And next thing you know, 10 years later, you're getting out of prison.
My gosh, I just recently did a talk out at one of the local high schools here, and I spoke in front of two classes, and I was telling the kids it's all innocence and fun right now, right? Because it is. That's pretty much how it started out for you, and it started out for me the same way. And I heard a lot of our other guests basically say the same thing. It's and we're wanting to escape from something, of course, right? We don't really may not be able to put our finger on it, but we know we just want to escape from something that's going to make us feel better. And I'm a big eagle and hawk fan. I just love the animals. Their talons are so sharp, right? And I'm like, the first time we do it is we think it's all fun and games. That's the first time those talons grab a hold of us. Not very hard, just lightly. They're just there, just in our skin, just a little bit. We start taking that fun too far, and we start relying on it without us even knowing it, right? And then by the time we do, those talons have, I mean, they're sunk deep in us. And it's just like you said, all of a sudden now one day you just realize, holy crap, I'm in prison. Right?
No, without a doubt. And for me too, my first introduction to the system was a federal charge, federal indictment. And so the crimes that I had to commit to sustain my habit, and the unexpected turns that I never predicted would happen, and 'cause it's all kind of in the moment. I had no idea that I was going to be facing a federal indictment at 19.
Right?
No idea.
You didn't plan that. That's what you planned after high school, right? It's like, after high school, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to prison.
Yeah. So yeah. When you take those first hits, when you get high with your friends and you do those things, you can't quantify the impact, moving forward. And what's really cool about, I think, having a fully developed brain now as a male is you can role play and, oops, sorry, my camera glitched. Is you can now play those tapes through, and you can look back through a different lens. And so that's what's cool about having been to college, been more educated, self-development books and all those things. So like now that I'm not my 19-year-old self, I can be 32, look back at my 19-year-old self with a 32-year-old lens and just be like, wow, like I really didn't stand a chance. Like
Yeah, right.
I just didn't have the human ability to not have been in those situations the way that I was. And then when you take it farther back, and in the psychology of children, and you learn how that impacts the absorption. Children absorb. So all they do basically is absorb from external environments and factors. And that's how you start to identify yourself. And so at 19, I didn't even realize what I was carrying from those early years of my life. And so I mean, like for me, had to overcome addiction, I had to meet my birth mom. And so that's when I started to believe in God. And so once I met her and I got closure, and so like I have forsaken tattooed on my knuckles because I lived my whole life thinking that I was forsaken, abandoned, forgotten, it didn't matter. Come
Yeah.
to find out that being taken away from her at 4 years of age, it wasn't anything, targeting her. But what it was is God's greatest act of mercy in my life because she was 13 when she had me. She was a victim. And so I was being raised, and then her mom abandoned her. And so she's left to fend for herself and be really resourceful, which included repeating the cycles of abuse just to stay alive and survive. Then when she had her second child, that child died from sudden infant death syndrome, and then DCFS took me away. And so I didn't know that growing up. And so like I in middle school, I would talk to my friends and I'd be like, yeah, if I ever saw my birth mom, I'd run her over. I look
Yeah.
back,
Right.
I'd run her over again. Come to find out, like I have like the greatest amount of compassion and empathy for my mom because she didn't stand a chance. And now if you play her tape through, she lost all of her children. And so I was basically bound to fail at depths that I can't even fathom right now because since I was adopted, I was able to be instilled with some values, some standards. Even though my parents only had me for about 9 years, I was still able to have that influence in my life. And so that's really when things started to switch for me. So at my 19-year-old self, I was carrying all of that. And whether I realized it or not, those were the things that were feeding into my low self-esteem, my low self-worth, why I was willing to, follow people because they were doing it, have all those little psychological angles going to play. Like, what are you doing? Curiosity, and then I really want to be a part of it. And so yeah, so I kind of went on a little bit of a
No,
story.
no, that was great. I loved it. I mean, I was getting goosebumps over here on my side of it because, that falls back to the stigma. That's how I'm seeing it, Ty. And, and I've said this many times on shows. I'm just as flippin' guilty. You see addicts and alcoholics or the unsheltered, and we have this comment like they're losers. They'll never do anything with their life. Why are they this way? We're judging them thinking because we think our life is a bed of roses, right? We think we're up here on this pedestal and they're down below us. And I've said this on the show many times. It's bull crap. It's complete bull crap. We're still on the same playing ground, right? We're still right here. We're not any better. And when you start hearing people's stories like yours, my gosh, no wonder we go a direction the way that we go. And society has, from a very early age, as we start absorbing things as kids, right? We start taking stuff in from every flipping direction. That trauma can happen without us even realizing it until down the road, like you said. And that's where the stigma's at. You didn't sit in that car that first time at Home Depot, I think you said, sat in a parking lot and did meth going, I'm going to do this because I'm going to do everything I can to F up my life. I'm going to destroy it and I'm going to be good at it, right?
Yeah.
You didn't do that. You did it
Oh,
because you were wanting to cover something up. That was your band-aid. You were bleeding. You're going, okay, I'm going to cover this band-aid up. And I did it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I feel freaking awesome. You know, people just think it's the drugs and the alcohol or the porn or the eating, whatever it may be. And it's not. All of us are trying to cover something up in our life. Some use food, right? Some indulge and gourd themselves with a ton of food. It's not any different than taking a crack pipe and taking a hit of crack or grabbing a fifth of vodka and drinking half of it in a night. It's the same thing.
yep, yep. I was just watching something recently, and they were just talking about like over 50% of America is obese, by
It
a
is, yeah.
significant definition. And so, I mean, how you want to kill yourself. I mean, there's just so many different ways that addiction exhibits itself in our lives. And the dopamine, so like even when I made that these decisions, like then you have all these biological triggers that are now coupling with these other things. So it's like opiate addicts. Like, I mean, you don't realize that you're doing it for this reason, or maybe you don't realize you're doing it for this reason. But then once you do it, now you have two more reasons on top of it that you weren't even aware were going to be, attached to that decision. And so now you have all these different factors and all these different, mechanisms of the human experience or the human body, our biology, put into play. And so it's like TV, people are addicted to TV, you
Yeah.
know, it's like when I'm in addiction, I'm like, whoa, why isn't my life how I want it to be? You get sober and you got to rebuild, go through all this. Well, I mean, people are addicted to TV, addicted to all these other things. You're like, well, the same thing applies to you because if you look how you spend your time, that's why you're not where you want to be. And so it's just crazy how the addiction and the dopamines that get, manipulated, it applies to so much more than just drugs specifically. Like addiction negatively impact our lives, whether it's our health, it's our time. We're not making the amount of money we want to be making. We're not doing this. It was like, how much time do you scroll every day? How much time do you spend in front of Netflix? What do you do at nighttime? What do you do in your free time? And so, I mean, I think you made a good point about, addiction. It's more than just drugs. There
Oh
are a
yeah.
lot of addictions, and a lot of them are legalized and they are not stigmatized and they are put in front of us for many reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And you definitely nailed it. I know people who they follow the media. I mean, they're on it all the time. And I listen to them and I see them and I watch their actions, and man, life is terrible for them, right? Because the world's coming to an end. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? You know, I, everything's just so bad. In our household, we choose not to watch the news. We have it for years. We don't want to know all the bad crap that's going on out there, right? There's a lot of good stuff happening too. However, TV is called programming, right? They're programming our freaking brains. That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why our life is in such turmoil all the time. So we're big believers here in our home. We just don't watch it. We're happy being in our own little world because life has a way of punching you in the gut quite a bit. So why do we want to take more punches? Because we can't control any of it, right? And we can't even control some of the punches it throws at us that we know are coming. We're doing our best to even learn because of what we've gone through in our addictions to stay on our side of the street, keep our sidewalk clean. And when we do get hit in the gut, is it something we can control? No, it's out of our hands. We'll deal with it, right? We'll deal with our emotions for a short period of time and then we're going to move on. And I've met a lot of people who have come out of addiction and their new addiction is doing a lot of service work. I mean, that's their new high. That's their new drug, right? That dopamine is switched. They get almost the same type of high, if not a better high, without the side effects, right, of the next morning or whichever, and they're enjoying it. And those that are addicted to the gym, I mean, my dopamine, if I miss a day at the gym during the week, it literally comes back in my head all day long. Oh my gosh, you missed a day. You need to go Saturday. Should maybe I'll sleep in a little bit Saturday, which my sleep in is like 6:30. No, yeah, I'm gonna go Saturday. I mean, it drives me crazy because again, that's my new dopamine hit. If I'm not at the gym to let out my frustrations and whatever is building up inside of me, I start thinking about it all the time, just like in the days where I could not wait for Friday to come so I could go get my Coke. Because it's party time. The week is over with and let's party, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a great addiction to have comparatively. But I have a question. So do you think that so what is your position on harm reduction? So because part of my experience of getting away, especially through college. So when I was at the Ohio State University, and then when I transferred to the University of Utah, a big piece of my ability to how should I say not revert back to old behaviors is I got my medical marijuana card. And so I've since stopped. And so I'm clean that right now from marijuana. But I think this just poses a good question. 'Cause you're talking about like the gym and all these other things, like those are good addictions. Where do you stand on harm reduction and the, how would I say it? Kind of like the babying down to fully get away from, all the substances. Um, do you think that that is a valid option and route? Because there's like Suboxone strips, which everybody's taking them to getting high. And so where do you stand on that? And do you think that that is a relevant strategy for those who maybe were struggling with, especially opiates, struggling with methamphetamine, crack cocaine? Because like for my story, uh, when I was in addiction, I didn't smoke weed. Like, because meth and weed do not go together.
Oh,
It
okay.
is all bad. And so weed never triggered for me anything from my past, maybe before my addiction. But once my addiction started, weed basically was removed from it. And so I used that to fully break away, get through 2 years of college. And it wasn't the best way, but I struggle to imagine some of the choices I would have made in certain situations where I didn't have the emotional tools to handle certain experiences. And so I use that as a cushion. And now today I'm not even smoking weed. And so I kind of used it kind of like Suboxone strips are used. What do you feel about that? And what is your experience around that?
That's a really good question, Ty. I've never been asked that question, and in all honesty, I don't know a lot about it. Okay, I've been working on having some people who do that for a living, right? They help other people with those types of things to come on the show so I can learn a lot more. I think the best way for me to put it is do what works for you, right? Because we're all different, okay? Someone could go that route and find it was a total mistake. And you won't know, right, until you try it, right? Others, I've heard others say, "Man, that saved my life." I've also heard controversy going, "No, this is bull crap. We need to get rid of this stuff." Because all we're doing now is we're making it worse for them. Well, how do we know? Because if you've got some that it's not working for and some that it is, where do you draw that line? Right? It's a tough one. It's like some people call addiction a disease. Some people totally disagree with it. My wife went to 8 different recovery centers. There were a few that she totally loved, that they really, really helped her. There were others, she's like, "Psh, I don't ever want anything to do with them again." Right? So it's like this fine line.
Yeah.
Where where is it that you step? And again, the only answer that I can come up that I think, and I don't like to get into the politics either, but however, I feel this is a politically correct answer, and it's just what works for you. If it works for you, and I know of other people like you, Ty, who got off the hard drugs and they started smoking pot again, right? Which is, a lot of people say, that's the drug that takes you further into more drugs. And we talked about it at the beginning of the show. However, if it's helping you step down like those baby steps, like you said, I don't see a harm in it. However, I'm not the one that's in that position. So I mean, I hope I answered your question the best I could, but that's just, I'm being just front,
Yeah.
honest with you on this. Yeah.
I mean, I think that there was so much wisdom in there, and I have like the utmost respect from how like well-rounded, because at the end of the day, like when we're teenagers, we're doing it for social. We're hanging out with people. And when you use it as adults, you're not like, hey, let's all get together and get stoned.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's like you're not trying to go hang out with the bros. No, you got a job, you got school, you got all these other things to do.
Family, right?
So yeah, so it's more of a personal thing versus a social thing. And so like for me, where it was through my group, my friend group that got me into the other drugs. As an adult, having been through addiction, having goals and having aspirations, having purpose, having passion, having all the things I didn't have when I was a kid, and it had a completely different intention. The intention was don't go backwards.
Right.
At all costs because yeah, after my last prison sentence, I got that glimpse into how the system functions. And then once I hit college and we started discussing the mechanisms in my public affairs, talking about how like justice system is basically an organ of our country and it has to be kept alive at all costs. And then I started to go backwards. I'm like, oh, that's why they violated me for not having an address and incarcerated me because it's a numbers game.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
And
that's why
it's
I
usually this
never.
kind of number, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like, well, that's why I never got help for my addiction while I was incarcerated. Like they have these programs, and I can't speak for every institution, but they have these programs, and it's called smearing. It's actually a terminology used by a lot of nonprofits doing a lot of work around this. And they provide something, or they say they do something for like PR to appease people to look be in good standing, but it's not accessible to the majority. And so I never had accessibility to these drug programs. I mean, in the jails, I go to 12 steps and stuff. But then when you throw in the psychology of your environment, like those things do help, but there's a lot of other factors, strenuating factors at play that debilitate your ability to fully absorb and implement and integrate, those things into your life. And then when you take in the transitioning when you get out, I mean,
Where do you go, right? Where do you go when you get out?
yeah, no, I mean that's
Usually, usually you go back to the same place where that got you there in the frickin' first place, right?
Yep. And when I met my birth mom, so how I got sober is I actually had to leave Utah because no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, for me, this is just for me, it was way too easy to fall back into that web because my environment and all my drug my entire drug addiction, I mean I could go to a 7-Eleven and run into somebody. I mean, I knew where to get it at all times. So if I had a moment where like I gave in, it wasn't hard for me to find it. And so it was really easy for me to give up. Then once I moved, changed my environment, met my birth mom, so I tended to my childhood traumas, which is also something the system will not do. They will not dive in deep and figure out why you're using drugs. For
Yeah.
the majority, there are things that exist, but for the majority, that's not their intent. And then I had to get into college. And so like when I got into the Ohio State University, my mind shifted because I'm like, wait, even if I make a mistake, as long as I stay on this track, I'm going to get somewhere. And so there's something about having that vision and that opportunity. And that's something the system that just doesn't give you, at least for me in my experience. And
No.
so, and most people, like you hit right on the nail, is most people don't have resources because there's a huge socioeconomic disparity of those that are incarcerated. There's a lot of statistics between those who have public defenders versus paid attorneys. There's a lot of statistics between people who can actually afford bail and then those who can't. And so, I mean, it's just like in a business. If you don't have X amount of inventory and you don't sell X amount of that inventory, then you don't make a profit. You don't make a profit, you go out of business. And so, after having experienced all of that, come out on the other side, getting educated about it, start studying sociology, learning stuff about psychology. I'm just like, no wonder I didn't stand a chance. I was up
No.
against the system that didn't want me to succeed. And yeah, so I had to go off on that for a little bit because I mean, my prison is a huge piece of what drives me because having experienced the truths, having witnessed it, felt it, seen it. So it's not just a story of myself. It's compounded with stories of so many other men who I ate with, I slept with. You know, my cell who did my tattoos was murdered last year, and he was murdered by a family member, just gotten sober. Then I think to myself, I'm like, if he hadn't been battling that system, that anytime when he made mistakes, when we know that the journey to self-actualization, the journey to becoming your best self, it's not perfect. You make
Yeah.
mistakes, you fall down. And I'm like, if he hadn't been caught in that system that was basically waiting for him to make a mistake so they could throw him back in, attach a dollar amount to his name, I'm like, he wouldn't have even been in that situation. He just had a daughter. He had a 1 year old daughter, not even 1 years old yet, and he died. And so I got murdered. And so I mean, there's a lot of other situations, and it's just like, so that's what drives me. That's where my passion comes from. The foster system. You know, foster system is a huge funnel, and so like I say, it's the number one funnel because from a direct source that we can like quantify straight to the penal system. That's where a good majority of each state's prison population stems from. And so, I mean, those factors from my life and my experiences, addiction, over 50% of people that are incarcerated are there for crimes related to addiction. And I know for me, none of my charges were possessions and stuff. So I may not even be in that statistic. So I'm like, okay, well, this statistic might be even bigger than that. And so, I mean, so now today it's like, well, the reasons I won't go backwards is number one, I use, harm reduction, college, meeting my birth mom, so childhood traumas, and then my passion, my purpose is like, okay, now what do I need to do with what I have and where I'm at to get to where I need to be so I can share my message, I can share my truth, and I can contribute to something outside of myself and let people know, hey, you've been deceived. you know when politicians scream about like violent criminals, they don't tell you that like around 50% of violent crimes are alcohol related, because now it's follow the money. They can't say that.
Yeah.
And so being in federal prison with a high profile politician, I mean, that right there, who gets to be around a pissed off high profile politician? Not many
Right.
more folks do. So like the things you learn, the things you see, the things you experience, you're like, well, something's got to give.
And everything you just spoke about, Ty, is so spot on. You know, I always believed in our justice system. I really did. And thank goodness I didn't get in trouble as a kid, as a teenager. Thank goodness none of my kids did, you know. However, when my wife started going through her addiction and the battle, it took me a couple years, probably up to 3 years before I realized how messed up our system is. Our system, and you said it not too long ago, our system is set up for failure. And it's not the system in itself. That's a success. It's the people within that system, right? Which are people that get caught in that web, like yourself and a lot of our other guests, even my wife. Once you're there, they want to keep you there as long as possible. And I have a friend who was taking care, the family basically hired this individual to help keep an eye on their loved one. This guy had a ton of money, lots and lots of money. He had, if I remember right, I believe he had 8 DUIs,
Oh, wow.
still had his license, didn't really do any time in jail. My wife got her first one, lost her license and thrown in jail. The difference, they got money from this guy. They didn't have any money
Yep.
from my wife, right?
Yep. Yep.
Why is it so messed up? And you talked about a business. It's exactly what our system is. It's a business. It's not there to help someone recover. It's not there to get someone who comes out of prison to put them in a place that's going to help them get back on their feet so they can give back to society. If you go down to the courthouse has, I don't know how many flipping floors. I don't even know how many floors it has. Somebody that I knew about 8, 9 years ago got access to go to those floors. And he said, you know what every floor is filled with? And I'm like, no, what? And he goes, cubicles. And he goes, and every floor I went on, there's people in these cubicles on the phone collecting money. I'm like, no way. And he's like, no, I'm serious. It's a business. They're making so much money off of this, right? It's and as far as I know, Ty, we are the only country that we keep people in the system. We keep their record. If you, I don't know, I think it's the UK or some of the other places that you did your prison time. Once you did your time and you're out, that prison time comes off your record. It didn't even exist. Like you didn't even go to a prison. Why do they do it that way? Because it gives you an opportunity to go find a job. Because people don't know about your history, right? The United States, they keep it there. They keep it over your head all the time. And we talked about before the show, the adversity, which we spoke about the adversity that you've gone through. Now to the success part. You're a big believer that a lot of people that come out of prison and even who are on the recovery road in long-term recovery, it would be good for them to start their own business. And I believe that as well, because I have seen the struggle my wife has had to find a job because she has a protection order that I put on her. She violated it. So that's on her record, right? She also has an assault on her record. No one wants to hire her. She wouldn't even be able to go out and find an apartment to live in because they do background checks. Not even be so. We've set up for failure again. People and my wife, after getting a job and then her background check would come back and they'd say, you know what? We thought we'd be able to take you, but no, we can't.
Yeah.
Right? The state accepted her application to be trained as a certified peer support specialist. She went through her training. She has the certificate, gone and applied for jobs. They tell her her background doesn't matter. The background comes back and they say, we would love to take you. However, the state funds us and the state will not allow us to hire you because of your background. But they accepted her application. My wife got so frustrated. She's like, why do I even try? Right? Why do I even try? She couldn't even get back into a job being an accounts payable person because of her background. So I love what you're talking about with wanting to get the word out for people. And we've had a lot of people on our show who's done exactly what you're doing, Ty, and that's starting their own
Love
business.
it. I love it. Well, and so like going to what your wife was experiencing. So like my favorite reference to kind of illustrate why this happens. So like environment is the greatest predictor of one's trajectory. And so if you control the environment, you control the trajectory. And I'm really glad that I studied into sociology because it pulls out into the macro and it brings human behavior to a social level. And this includes so I want to touch just real quick on why your wife is experiencing that and why, tens of millions of Americans are experiencing this. Because if you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so this is why like the employment and so this is why I'm in business because it circumvents what's been placed in front of us. So employment and housing. So like in order to reach self-actualization, your bare basic needs must be met and they must be met like consistently, and you must have that freedom in a sense to start looking forward instead of being in survival mode. And so the entire, those who've been incarcerated felons, they're kept in survival mode basically because they can't rely on those basic staples of stability to sustain them and then progress them beyond where they're at, generally speaking. And so like the bottom is physiological needs. And so that's housing, water, warmth, rest. But then safety needs, which is the second one, which is basically access to money, your employment, your job. And then beyond that, now you can get into, belongingness. So love belonging. So the ostracization, the stigmatization. So your own community, your own country. So it's harder to, have that level and that capacity of belonging when you go to these places, you're doing all these things right. They're like, sorry, we don't do business with people like you, And so I think in the stigmatizations that come with addiction, with having been a felon, it plays into your ability to be socially accepted and to belong in your community, in your country, And then, so for me, business, entrepreneurship is a way to circumvent all of that. So I can't rent, but I can buy.
Yes, you can.
So I can't rent, but I can buy. So entrepreneurship for me is the next level. So as you discover through addiction and through finding passion, finding purpose, finding direction, what I want to do with my life. When I'm on my deathbed and I'm literally sitting there thinking about my life, how am I going to feel about my life? Am I going to feel like I did something? Am I going to have regrets? Did I do what I said I was going to do, or did I not do? Are those last moments going to be painful, or are they going to be a moment of, okay, I did it. I did the best that I could. And so for me, entrepreneurship and business is the answer to that. And then it's the step up above recovery to where are my deficits? Who am I? Where are my gaps now? And so it's like a revelation of self, of your internal deficits that don't necessarily, these are the things that keep you sober. Now, these are the things that will help you be successful beyond sobriety. And so it's two different things. I'm really good at taking instructions. I'm really good at falling in line. I've been programmed for it. But what I'm not good at is managing my own time, creating that, and then sticking to it. And so now it takes your growth to a whole new level, because now you're basically learning to achieve a level of independence and I don't know, how do you know how to say it, like how to sustain something yourself, build something. And by doing so, you're now opening up this huge spectrum of opportunity and possibilities. And so, as I said before too, is like, okay, so like, what is it that drives you? Your mess is your message. And so through your adversity, it's where passion comes from, usually comes from something that stings, something that hurts. So how do I best achieve that? When I'm in my last moments, I felt like I did something for something that mattered. And so business and entrepreneurship for me is the only way mathematically to get there, because I can go find a job making, poverty wages, or I can, sacrifice, take the hard road, face my internal, deficits, and then, start attacking those in a sense and grow in a whole new form, and then circumvent this, mathematical, setup where I'm not going to be able to make enough money to really be able to create those contributions in the way I want to, and, die a happy man. And so for me, entrepreneurship, we all have skills. We're in the digital era now. There are tools, we've got AI coming out. So like anybody today could go learn how to operate and prompt AI and build a business around it. We have skills, we have tradesmen, we have, I've done a lot of labor. I'm not good at it, but I just met with someone before who did that for a lot of their life. And now as a felon, they started a business around it, and they're reaching, financial security that was not possible before. And now they're providing opportunity to people that matter to them. And so no longer are they falling in line with this, pre-configured system and this pre-configured hierarchy. They're creating their own hierarchy, and they're channeling what matters to them through that experience. And so for me, if you want to learn more about yourself than addiction taught you, go start a business. I
Yeah.
was a little all over there, but
No,
that's the only way I know to put it because I want to contribute. You know, my end game is politics. I want to get into politics. Well, I was incarcerated with a high profile politician and he was pretty pissed off. And so I have how would I say, I have a peek behind the curtain of how it functions. So I know that I need to be at least a certain level of socioeconomic status so that I don't fall prey and I also don't get suppressed. And so if I want to get into a world and actually be a thought leader of change, of inclusion, of acceptance and forgiveness, I have to take certain actions. And falling into what exists, I can't do that.
yeah.
I'll be in this mathematically restricted box. And so
Well, you'll
I'm
still be playing the victim too, right?
yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And so, I mean, that was a little all over the place. I mean, I get kind of emotional thinking about this. It's like, this is the only way. This is the only way. I can't do this job. I can't have this job. My confidence, my self-esteem, the societal restrictions around me are always going to be hammering on me. But if I suck it up, I take the hard route. I learn what I suck at, learn what I'm good at, and then learn how to navigate through business around that. I can build a quality of life for my future posterity, for my future wife, for my future family that is literally not possible right now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for everybody who's a felon, it's like you have skills, you can go learn something, you can go to college. My journey started with college, and there's FAFSA, there's other, there's justice through coding out in New York. So that's something I applied to. I didn't end up taking it, even though I got accepted into it. So there's a lot of opportunities to get skills that you can then turn and start a business. And maybe for some people, you want to work for someone else and then start a business. Or maybe you don't have the skill sets, but whatever it looks like for whoever it is, like the surest way to build a life that makes your adversities worth it, that allows you to feel fulfilled about your life and how you turn those adversities into positives. For me, there's no other answer but business.
Yeah. A lot of our guests, Ty, have come in and some have even started their own recovery centers, right? Some have even opened up sober livings. Some have opened up fitness places. Some have opened up nutrition and coaching.
Love it.
Some have just got on the public circuit for speaking, right? I was telling you before the show that a good friend of mine, Curtis Marsh, loved the man to death. He invited my wife and I to go out and listen to him speak at the Other Side Academy downtown Salt Lake, and of course, man, I jumped on it. And when I was out there, we were talking with Dylan, and Dylan was on our show, and I love that man to death as well. And he's done some prison time. And matter of fact, some of the people that we've had on our show, I've come to find out they were all incarcerated together. They know one another from being incarcerated together, right? And it's kind of crazy how all
Cool.
this is coming together.
So
And
cool.
Dylan and I were talking about the talents that a lot of the people who are in the Other Side Academy right now, at the Other Side Academy, they're finding out that they have, right? And it took me till I was, gosh, almost in my mid 50s before I started figuring out what my why was in life. Some people find it earlier, like yourself, right? You pretty much know what your why is, and you're going with it. And again, when you start getting your mind clear and your mind, your brain starts firing differently because you don't have the drugs fogging it. You start thinking a lot clearer, and you really can come up with the talent that you have, not even knowing that you have it. I was talking with somebody about 3 weeks ago, and they were telling me this dream that they had about wanting to open up a sober living. And they were saying that every time they thought about it, it just scared the living crap out of them. However, it wasn't leaving their mind, right? It's staying there. And they asked what I thought about it. Right now, I'm not this individual. And I love that this person asked. This is what I told them. If it's scaring the living crap out of you, that's your number one sign you need to move forward. And I'm serious. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you're scared to death because that's the opposition not wanting you to go the direction that you're going, because you're going to help people. The opposition don't want us to help other individuals. So I'm like, go, just go. Who can I get you in contact with? I've built relationships around the addiction stuff now that I've been doing this for a couple years, and I've met some amazing individuals. I can get you in contact with somebody who's done it and they can help you, right? So just do it.
I love it.
I mean, I started the podcast not knowing a dang thing about a podcast. I remember my first show, I'm sitting there talking to my co-host, just going, how does this work? What do we do? We just sit and have a conversation. I was scared the first time I got up on stage, or actually just got up and spoke at a luncheon. I mean, I was scared, right? I've won awards before, and I remember up there at the podium where I had to say a few words, and I could feel my slacks getting my leg because my legs were freaking shaking so bad. However, I got up and freaking did it, and now I can just do it. That fear's not there. And you know, with what you're saying about people who have been incarcerated or have a record, coming up with your own thing, man, is huge. And I could almost guarantee it, they will end up being successful because it's that passion, right? If you have that passion and you want to do it, you're going to do it. Robert Kiyosaki, the one who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you know, he was saying in his book that he saved up the money, didn't have the money really to go to this real estate class, right? This seminar. And he went to it. He come up with the money and he went to it. And he says in the book, the difference, what makes me different than the other people is, he goes, I did exactly what they asked me to do. Other people started doing it and went, no, this is too hard. And they stop. They're in that same position that they were before they went to the class. Robert Kiyosaki makes millions and millions of dollars now because of all his real estate stuff, right? The only difference was he kept going. Even though in his story, he talks about how many roadblocks he hit. However, he still kept going. And to me, that's the key. If it is in you and it's in your mind all the time, and it's burning that fire underneath your rear end, just keep going. Just keep going.
No, I mean, real quick, I just have to add in too. I mean, that's beautiful, and Robert Kiyosaki. So like, I don't watch mass media either because I understand how influenced it is, but I follow certain figures, and Robert Kiyosaki is one of them. And right now, there are a lot of things happening on the international scale that will impact the micro. So the macro, I'm not doom and gloom. I'm not saying all these things, but I'm just saying, like, Robert Kiyosaki is someone that I follow today just because it keeps it real, and he doesn't present it like he talks crap on the mass media, which is kind of why he does what he does. And he's been talking about some things lately that I think everybody should be at least a little curious about. There's some macro level things, shifts happening right now, and if anybody's following, like, our economy, our debt. Everything from our interest rate on our debt this year, it's gonna be the highest it's ever been. There's a lot of things that, you know, find your reputable source, and I really strongly encourage anyone listening to this to at least take a peek into it, because some of these things are intentionally being left out of what, you know, the mass media is pushing as well.
Yeah.
Because yeah, so I just had this Robert Kiyosaki. I love him. Like, I love Robert Kiyosaki. You know, when he said, "Where's Joe Biden? Where's Hunter Biden's laptop?"
Yeah.
He was on top of that. I was like, I love this man.
Yeah.
So,
So, And that's the thing. Sometimes I get irritated about however, again, I'm staying on my side of the street. You know, I don't want to sit here, and again, we don't like talking about politics on our show, and I don't care whether you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're in the middle. What I do care about is our amazing country, right? We have been in one of the greatest countries ever, ever. And I don't care if someone comes into office that I don't like. If they're making a change in our lives and making our country a better place, I'm all for it, whether I like this person or not. Right. And yeah, there's a lot of bad things that's going on. And again, that's why we do our best to stay away from the media on our side, because I don't want to wake up every morning and go, well, shit, a bomb's going to drop on my head probably today. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like I'd rather wake up and have a smile and go make someone else smile or go make someone else feel good about themselves that day. And we'll kind of leave it at that, because I could go on a rampage.
No,
So
100%. Thank you for
yeah,
having me on. For reals. Thank you so much, Al.
yeah. Well, gosh, Ty, man, it's been an hour already, man. It just goes by like that. You know, uh, you've shared a lot of great information. You've got a lot of great insight. You have a ton of knowledge. And again, this is another reason why I love doing this show, because I get to be educated as well. There's things that you said today that I didn't even know. And yeah, just the education that these shows provide, and the information that the shows provide. And I want to make sure too, Ty, that if there's any of our listeners who's in a spot where they just came out of incarceration, or they're working on rebuilding their life, and they're in recovery, and they're wondering what direction to go, you're someone that can help, right? Because you're doing it. How can someone find you?
So my number one is LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn more than any platform. And so just Ty Shane. As well, you can find me. I mean, I have my business is, I mean, I don't want to that'd be just the best way, LinkedIn. And
Okay.
for people who got out, I mean, I just want to end on another note with that. One of the best hacks I think that anybody can do, and I mean, you get value from it as well, is consider finding your local community college, register, sign up for 6 credits, and take out student loans. And so what this is it gives you the financial cushion. So yeah, you're taking on debt, but it's really, really the debt's not like you got to pay all this today. Like you can keep pushing these 6 credits. So 6 credits is really light, it's low intensive. You can get about $5,000 cash in your bank every 4 or 5 months. And so if you're looking to rebuild a life, you don't have access to all these resources, you can't get a job that's paying you very well. Well, education is proven to be the number one reducer of, recidivism. And so educating yourself, regardless of what it is, you don't know what you want to do. Well, start with community college, consider it. You can get financial assistance from it. FAFSA will cover your tuition charges. And then, I mean, you can choose, it's what I've done. I've chosen to take on this debt is you leverage student loans, since there's basically no other way for a felon to get money like that. That can be boom, now you got your hoopty, you got a car. Say you find a place, you need to have some down payment or whatever. And at the same time, too, you can, through resources with whatever those local community colleges, is you can get financial assistance. So, like, how do I manage my finances? And so it's just an opportunity to learn and to grow and to kind of circumvent a lot of the barriers put into place. And then, yeah. So I just had to add that into there for
Okay.
anybody who's struggling. Maybe you're just got sober and you're looking for what you want to do with your life and you don't know. Well, educating yourself, using what exists. I dropped out of college in January to go full into entrepreneurship because that was next best for me. But it all started with education, and it's expensive. It's blown out. But community college is a great place to start. It's just, I mean, for felons especially, like even though I will never go back and pay for a university's education again, it can be used and leveraged as a resource to circumvent, like I said before, those social barriers. So it's a good little hack, something to consider. And it's 6 credits is 2 classes. You can keep it light, you can keep it easy, but then you can use that to get yourself into a position to do what you want to do, and maybe college will help you figure that out.
Okay, that's great information, really good information. Thank you for sharing that. One last thing, would that be your main message you want to get out to our listeners, or do you have a main message that you'd like to share with them?
Um, I mean, it just depends who's listening.
Okay.
It depends who's listening because there's different strategies, different tactics for different people in different phases. And so, like for the man, woman just getting out of prison, community college, max out on student loans. Because I mean, the odds are against you already. The rate of recidivism, um, working against you, the system, parole, all those things are working against you. So anything you can do to negate those odds, boom. And then so it's like you just got sober. Well, I mean, how do you turn your traumas? How do you turn your adversities, and how you turn your addiction into something that drives you, like you mentioned, sober living, looking into starting your own recovery center. What is that? So it's like, I don't, so it's a hard question to answer, but
Okay.
it's go for it because the odds are already against you. So
What do you got to lose, right?
I spoke with a lady from First Step House. Like, hey, can I come speak about entrepreneurship? And she's like, oh, no, 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 no. We don't want anything to be any harder. I'm like, almost everybody in there is going to fail. That's just the statistics. So what have you got to lose? You literally have nothing to lose. So go for it. You know, you literally have nothing to lose. You've already overcome things in that moment that many will never overcome. So until you maybe falter again, you are now part of a potential statistic that is far less than the majority's results are going to be. Go for it. Do something different. Take that leap. Face those fears. You feel like you can't do it. Definitely go find a way to do it. There's people like you said who have done X, Y, and Z. Go speak to them. I got into marketing because it fell in line with my education around like sociology and psychology. And so consumer behavior is a huge overlap. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning every day. I have no clue how to run a business. I have no clue how to do sales, but I'm learning. And it's scary, but I mean, it drives me and it gives me a path to my passions that otherwise a 9 to 5 can't give me. I can't make the impact I want to make through another route. So it drives me, it inspires me. And so inspire yourself because the world, we live in a great country, as you said. At the same time, if you're in these certain systems, it's not trying to help you succeed. So you got to inspire yourself, you got to drive yourself, and there's great recovery communities, and there's people who have been there, and they're going to support you. And so, for me, just be go for it. Find something big, think big, something that really inspires you. Grant Cardone, the 10X. So if you're shooting, if your current goals are not inspiring you enough to overcome the adversities that come your way, maybe you're thinking too small. So think bigger. So if 100,000 doesn't drive you, there's a million, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the destination definitely does affect the journey to it. And so make that destination something that really inspires you. And so, I don't know, that was a little over the place.
No, no, that was perfect. And the reason why I do believe it's perfect, Ty, is because it's like you said, what you said to the person from the First Steps house, right? People who are in recovery, they're already doing something extremely hard. There are I don't know what the percentage is, but there are some that just don't make it, right? The talons are so deep they just cannot get rid of them. However, you find yourself to where you finally got those talons out and you're moving on. You've just overcome something extremely tough.
Mhm.
By golly, why not take that chance, right? And if you trip and you fall, stand back up and figure out a different way. There's always and I usually don't like the word always, right? I just, that's a hard word for me to grasp. However, I do believe there's always a way around it. There's always a way. And you said it too, Ty. Find the right people. There are people out there who are more than happy to help you. That they're happy to, it's like hitting a piñata, right? They put that blindfold on you and they spin you, and then supposedly they're supposed to line you up so you have a better chance of hitting the piñata, I think, or the pin the tail on the donkey. Even if you miss the butt and you pin it on the wall, you're still a lot closer than you were before. So just do it. Move forward. And there's people like Ty, people like myself, and a lot of other guests who have been on the show who are more than willing to help. All you got to do is ask. If you do not ask, that's your first mistake. Do not be afraid to ask someone, what direction do I go? Oh, you don't know? Okay, I don't, but I got somebody that does. And yeah, so great advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And one more nugget I gotta add.
Okay.
So I got approved. I wouldn't think that I would ever get approved for a loan. Banks won't give me. I have less than perfect credit. And so something that's giving me life as I'm in my marketing journey, and AI is totally disrupting this industry. So I actually came in at a good time. um, Utah Microloan Fund. And so that's a resource that anybody, say you're like, oh, I don't have the money to start a company, or hey, I had this idea, oh, I had less than perfect credit. I've been building my credit for 6-12 months. It's still not very good. Um, it's a nonprofit that specifically was made to work with less than perfect credits and credit scores. And so it's changed my ability to build a business because I have no experience, as I said before. And
Right.
so there are resources and there are grants and there are other things. So that's just one that I used. But if you look, whatever your objection to yourself is, there's a solution for it. So if you're looking to make those next steps, start a business, you're like, oh, I don't have the money, I don't have the time. Talk to people who have done what you're trying to do, see how they did it. And so they're going to have like a little piece like I just shared. And so figure there's solutions. That's all I'm going to say. Sorry.
Cool. No, I'm glad that you shared that too, because that's important information. So thank you for sharing it. Ty, my gosh, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us today. This was a great show, a lot of great information, very inspirational as well. Anyway, I believe it was. Hopefully our listeners will feel the same way. I mean, adversity can turn into success. You hear it all the time. There's thousands and thousands of stories out there. So take the chance, right? And again, thank you for being with us today. And I just want to say thank you too to all our many sponsors that we have who have made this possible. All our guests, our guest co-hosts, Resilience Talk Network. We are looking at coming back, being bigger and better. We got to just find a right location that's going to work for us. Again, we're all kind of bummed that we lost our spot. However, we are not looking at it as a loss. We're looking at it as a gain, because we know that God has better plans for us, that there's something out there that's going to be just perfect for us. And yeah, it's just going to be a new step. So we're not going backwards. We're actually moving forward, even though the show doesn't look as professional as it usually does. But I'm a firm believer, man, the show must go on. So if this is what we have, this is what we get. And we hope you guys are comfortable with it. Anyways, we love you guys. We appreciate you. And yeah, keep following us, man. Thank you so much. And if you know someone who could value from this message that Ty shared with us today, man, please ask them to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and all the other platforms. We would greatly appreciate it. We're going to leave you with this, as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.